Hello and welcome to Otis and Saul on Influence. My name is Tom Carney and I'm here to share a few thoughts about influencing government from the inside. As an employee, if you're watching this video, you're probably a public servant. And if you're a public servant, you're probably motivated by making things better. And if you're taking a course about influence, then you're probably taking that course because you want to actually have an impact. I'm here to share a few things you can do right now. You don't need permission to do these. You don't need approval to do these things. You don't need a degree or certification of any kind. My dogs, Otis and Saul, are going to help tell this story. These two guys were a big part of my life for 15 years or so, and I have way more pictures of them than anything else. I'm going to talk about 6 things. Listening before you speak, knowing your audience, when ego gets in the way, and how to use it, why sharing is good, and why we should manage by exception. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a little bit on why we can't communicate too much. Listening before you speak. You know this already, but it's worth repeating. Listen to the senior leaders in your organization, even all the way up to the very top. Listen to their speeches. What do they say? Look for the sound bites that you can pull out and then bring to your boss in the context of your next big idea. As you've already learned, understanding the mandate of your department and how your organization fits into this is essential context. And to influence, you need to be able to connect what you want to happen to those bigger dots, if you will. So part of the game is to connect the dots. That's what the listening is about. Knowing and listening, of course, means knowing your audience. One smart person once told me 4 key audiences in the public service. One is your boss and your immediate boss. Your immediate boss and their boss. The client or the citizen or whomever it is who is intended to benefit from what it is you're doing. The employee, you and your coworkers, and other stakeholders. So those other stakeholders might be other groups within the same organization that you work in, or they might be outside of government entirely. But the thing is to know your audience and your immediate audience being your boss, to be sure that you demonstrate you're competent in your job before you try and make too many changes. Once you have that competence, you have some trust, and then you can go from there. Ego gets in the way. So ego, I wrote a blog post on it. You could probably look it up somewhere. That's one of the 3 things. Anyway, ego as in, it's my idea. It's special to me. As an influencer, the greatest thing that can happen to you is for your boss to come back at you and say, I've had this great idea, even when it's that idea that you've been proposing to them for some time. That's exactly what you're looking for. So try and make your boss look good wherever you can. If you can't, and they're a total jerk, well, then you have to find another boss. But that's not what this presentation is about. You need to control your ego, let others take ownership of the idea, because that's how the idea will migrate through the whole organization. Managing by exception. So you don't need permission to do your job. And if you seek permission, you may not get it, or at least you'll get slowed down. So, there's a couple of fun expressions. Proceed until apprehended. And don't ask permission, but beg forgiveness if you have to. This all requires some judgment, of course, but, try and stay away from the compliance mindset if you can. Just go do it. Sharing is good. Open is better. Sharing is the activity that fuels successful collaboration, and without it, nobody knows really where you're coming from. I'm assuming you're a relatively junior public servant and you're trying to influence those above you. One of the ways you can do that is actually by creating a bit of a knowledge base, sharing the knowledge that you have learned and that you continue to learn as you learn it. And by doing this, you sort of plant the seeds of ideas in amongst your audience. And it can be challenging because sometimes you don't really know who's listening. I've been doing it for years on Twitter, and every now and then you get this acknowledgement from somebody, not on Twitter. I mean, as in the acknowledgement isn't public. It's going into a meeting or something. He says, "Oh, I saw your tweet on X," and so this has motivated me greatly to share as I continue my journey, and I highly recommend it to you. It takes persistence. Do it consistently over time. Don't get too hung up on a regular pattern. You're not setting yourself up as a media outlet. You don't need to publish daily. If you have nothing to say nothing. Be authentic. Post when you have something important or relevant to say. And go forth and do. Go forth and share. You can't communicate too much. You're probably working from the corner of your desk on something, and if you're trying to influence, you just over and over and over again. Like you've got to say, I once had a product line manager when I was working for a national a telecommunications company, and he said to me, before an idea gets traction, you have to say it over and over and over again until you're sick of saying it, and then you need to say it again. Find different ways to say it. Find more creative ways to say it. You have to punch through the clutter and the noise that particularly executives are dealing with. And keep that in mind. That's part of knowing your audience, right? Is that they have very short attention spans. Necessarily so. They're all smart people, but sometimes they need to hear the same thing in a different way. Use whatever tricks you can to stand out. I sometimes use dogs, as you can see, or ducks. Dogs are good. Furry things are good. Advertising uses furry kittens and babies for a reason. It raises the oxytocin levels in your brain and thus makes you more prone or willing to be together. Anyway, I'm thinking whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I have lots of pictures of dogs. So there you go. Some closing thoughts. Never take no from someone who can't give you a yes. This is something I heard years ago when I was working on GCpedia, and it's just a brilliant thing that I've used a couple of times, taken it to the extreme, actually a couple of times in my career. And the rationale goes like this: most of the time when you ask permission for something, the first person you're going to ask is essentially a rule follower, somebody who interprets existing rules. Those rules may or may not be real. They may just be conventions. And even if there are rules, that person is very likely not to be in the position to change the rules. So what you do is you escalate. If you don't like that no and you really want a yes, or you really want to push a thing, take it to their boss, and so on and so forth. I once did this and got as far as the deputy minister, which in Canada is a very senior position. And the answer was still no, by the way, but I felt I could accept it because it came from someone who theoretically could have said yes. So the point is, don't just say no. Don't just accept no. Push it if you need to. Our clerk in Canada, who's the most senior public servant, actually in his opening address when he first became clerk, challenged us all to question the procedures and, ask the question, why do we do things this way? That's fair. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful and interesting. We've only scratched the surface of the topic. There's tons of books you could read, and you're taking this course, so there's other things you're learning as well. And a really good place to start would be on the interpersonal communications, sharpening those skills, because influencing government is really about influencing people, and it happens one conversation at a time. So, with that, onward. Thanks for watching.